Have you ever had a fantasy so vivid, so personal, but felt like you could never say it out loud? Especially if you're a woman, this feeling is more common than you think. Across the United States, millions of women are navigating the complex world of desire, fantasy, and intimacy. But when it comes to talking about those fantasies, especially the deepest, kinkiest, most private ones, silence often wins, not because women aren't having fantasies. In fact, studies show the opposite. 95% of women report having sexual fantasies they've never told anyone about. Common themes include dominance, submission, role play, group scenarios, even fantasies that contradict their everyday personalities. But only a small percentage ever feel safe enough to share them with a partner. That gap between fantasy and expression, it's shaped by centuries of cultural programming, internalized shame, and fear of judgment. From early childhood, many women are taught to be polite, restrained, and good. Sexual expression, especially when bold or unconventional, often clashes with those expectations. Media reinforces the message. Movies, books, even pop songs often hide, idealize, or punish female desire. The message is subtle but strong. Nice. Girls don't talk about sex. If you do, something must be wrong with you. This silent conditioning runs deep. According to research in the archives of sexual behavior, women experience just as many sexual thoughts as men, but they're significantly more likely to experience guilt or anxiety afterward. The result? Silence. Several psychological barriers make it difficult for women to speak up about what they want. Fear of being judged, fear of rejection, and fear of being misunderstood. Many worry that sharing a fantasy will be taken literally, as a request to act it out. But often, fantasies are symbolic. They aren't always meant for real life. Psychologist Dr. Justin Lemiller found that many fantasies serve emotional or psychological purposes, like exploring power, safety, rebellion, or taboo. It's about the mental experience, not necessarily the physical one. Sexual fantasies activate the brain's default mode network, the system we use for imagination, reflection, and creativity. These fantasies help us process feelings, desires, and even unresolved emotional experiences. For example, a woman who feels in control all day might fantasize about surrendering that control. Someone who grew up with strict rules might fantasize about breaking them. A woman in a stable relationship might dream of a stranger, not because she wants to cheat, but because she craves novelty or danger in a safe, imaginary space. It's not about acting out the fantasy. It's about the freedom to imagine. One of the biggest misconceptions, especially in relationships, is that if someone shares a fantasy, it means they want to do it for real. That's not always the case. Fantasy can be a form of emotional release. It might reflect a desire for excitement, attention, vulnerability, or empowerment, not necessarily a literal wish list. The brain distinguishes between fantasy and reality. Neuroscience shows that imagining a scenario and wanting to live it are processed in separate brain regions. So just because a woman says she fantasizes about something doesn't mean she wants to change the relationship dynamic. Often, she just wants to be understood. What women need most when it comes to sharing fantasies is emotional safety. That means being able to speak without fear of being laughed at or dismissed, knowing that a partner will listen, not immediately react, feeling respected even when being vulnerable. Dr. Brené Brown explains that true intimacy isn't about physical closeness, it's about emotional risk, and sharing a deep fantasy is one of the most intimate risks a person can take. When that risk is met with empathy and openness, it builds trust, it deepens connection, it makes people feel seen. Here are real, anonymous insights from women across the U.S. I've always fantasized about being in control, but I've never said it out loud. I was scared it would change how he saw me. 36, Texas. I told my boyfriend once and he joked about it. I shut down immediately. I felt embarrassed. 28, Michigan. The first time I shared my fantasy, I cried. Not because I was ashamed, but because someone finally heard me without judging. 42, California. These aren't isolated stories. They reflect a wider truth. For many women, fantasy isn't just about sex. It's about emotional honesty, and when women share their fantasies, research shows they report higher levels of sexual satisfaction, stronger emotional intimacy, and more confidence in and outside the bedroom. In one study from the Journal of Sex Research, couples who talked about their fantasies experienced significantly higher relationship satisfaction. That's because fantasy sharing isn't just about desire. It's about feeling safe, validated, and emotionally close. Here's how partners, especially men, can support women in feeling safe enough to open up. Respond with curiosity, not shock. Don't assume it's a request. Avoid jokes or teasing. Thank her for her honesty. Consider sharing your own. You don't owe your fantasy to anyone. But if you do want to share it, make sure you're doing it for you, not for validation, not out of pressure, but because your voice deserves space. And if you've ever felt weird, guilty, or too much for what turns you on, please know, you're not alone. You're not broken. You're human. Your fantasy is a window into your mind, your desires, and your emotions. It deserves respect, especially from yourself. Women's sexual fantasies are powerful, complex, and deeply personal. They're shaped by psychology, culture, trauma, freedom, and imagination. Talking about them isn't dirty. It's brave, and when those conversations happen in the right space, with respect, openness, and safety, they can change everything, not just in the bedroom, but in how women see themselves, how they connect with partners, and how they move through the world. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about sex, it's about truth, and every woman deserves the freedom to express hers. So whether you've never shared a fantasy before, or you're just starting to explore this side of yourself, you're doing great. Desire is not dirty, it's not shameful, it's a part of who we are, and when we embrace it, talk about it, and own it, we unlock deeper connections, greater self-understanding, and a whole lot more pleasure. Thanks for being here with me today. And hey, whatever your fantasy is, you deserve to feel safe enough to say it out loud, and every woman deserves to be heard.